Hyder Ali because he didn't inherit a kingdom. He didn't inherit his kingship.
Yeah.
So he needed to say that I can be brutal and cruel as much as a king.
Yes.
So you better toe my.
Correct.
Could that be the reason?
Very much, very much. And that inferiority also comes through so many times, because in the army he was the, at the level of Nayak, Subedar Nayak or whatever. So people would, Banni Nayak re, so purposely to make him feel,
that
small,
you're not a sultan.
Not a sultan or of royal descent or something. Especially the
Hyderabadi Nizams and all would not give him the time of day.
Time or matrimonial alliances that he tried to forge with them. I would always say you're of lesser origin, though you're a Muslim. And even these Dalwai brothers, Devraj and Nanjaraj, they used to call him Banni Naikare, Banni Naikare. So he actually used his good offices with the Maharaja and got a proclamation, out that anyone who calls me Nayak, his tongue should be cut off. And though this proclamation obviously didn't make its way to everybody in the kingdom so quickly, the very next day of the proclamation coming, some poor peon or someone called him Naikre, and the poor guy had his tongue cut off because he didn't actually know. So it shows the deep sense of inferiority and that seeking for validation, legitimacy that he always sought.
So you've written also in this, when you were documenting about the guy wasn't born to royalty, but he adopted this nouveau riche qualities pretty soon, huh?
Yeah.
So he says between what you've written is, you're such a great storyteller, Vikram. Between 8 a.m. to 9 a.m. he departed from his palace, gave audience to his secretaries in an assembly. Or one can actually imagine while you're writing about this. He met his sons, friends, relatives. Then he appears on this balcony next. He receives this salute of elephants and horses. Next, tigers pass by, led by the hand, and were fed by him with sweets. What was he giving mithai to tigers?
Mysore Pak.
Okay, this is for Vikram and not for the tigers. And they were wearing green and gold mantles, bonnet in their head of what were these doing? What was he doing with these two? And what was he doing with all this? With the tigers marching along with the elephants?
Some kind of medieval fantasies must be of royalty. And this assertion, I think everywhere that assertion. And after taking over the kingdom, so he starts, the first thing he does is, I want to conquer a kingdom of my own. And that's how he goes and invades Bidanur. Bidanur, which is the Canara, Shimoga part of today's Karnataka, Shivamogga. So that part, which was so fertile, so prosperous, he gets several Wilkes writes at almost several million sterling pounds that he gets out of the treasury there. That becomes, he calls that his Swarajya. So, something that he conquered and got it of his own. So while in Mysore, so Hyder that way was such a smart man. He knew that he was a usurper and the people would not take it lightly.
And he was illiterate.
Illiterate and still smart. I think that shows that education does nothing.
Spoke several languages.
In Hindustani, Kannada, Tamil, Telugu, Marathi.
Smattering of French probably.
French, English little bit. But the only literary achievement of his life was to learn to sign the first alphabet of his name. Which also he would like, I can sign this and do this. So Bidanur, that is where he starts minting his own Haidari pagodas, his own coins. But there also he is very careful. He knows it's a Hindu province which he has captured, a Hindu monarch who had saved him. So the people who were a Hindu majority would not like this. So he kept that Vodayar as a puppet on the throne. He was allowed to do what he wanted to do. All the trophies of war would be gone and submitted to the Maharaja's feet. Oh, I am but your humble servant. And proclamations and farmans would come in the Maharaja's name. But it was no secret for anybody as to where the true power lay. And the Maharaja too, after Immadi Krishna Raj Wadiyar died, his son, etc., Nanjaraj Wadiyar, Betta the Chamaraj, all these people come on to the throne. By the time they come of age, or they get to be a thinking mind of their own, quite surreptitiously a glass of milk goes to their chambers, and next morning they are found dead, and when investigated, it is Hyder who's got the milk poisoned. And then an infant is placed on the throne till the time the infant comes of age, and he starts sending any ruler would feel suffocated that he can't do anything and he's just a Raja in the name of it. So
from then probably the myth or the legend that sons don't live long.
Yes, actually. And
Probably because of that
you had to adopt.
That male heir.
Male heir. Alamelamma's curse, which is spoken about.
So who knows? It's probably
It
because of that.
It is that only. And this period was when all this crisscross genealogies happened. And that's attributed to a 1610 curse of this lady called Rani Alamelamma to Rajavadiyar, where she had that famous 3-line curse, Talakadu, Maralagi, Malingi, Maduagi, Mysuru, Doregalige, Makkalagadirali. And then he propitiates her, and it is let them be childless becomes alternative generations childless. I don't know what that helps in. but
childless, matlab, this could also be that he was going about killing
people. Yeah,
all
killing
the male children.
Correct. And so this, and in that also puts this Maharani Lakshmi Ammani in seclusion, and she's still in that very troubled circumstance where in front of her adopted kids are being killed. Her husband has died. She becomes a widow at the age of 24. And look at her grit. Anyone else would have just collapsed, and this lady was made of sterner stuff. And she continues to send emissaries through the Mysore Pradhans to Iyengars, Tirumal Rao and Narayan Rao, who take her emissaries all the way to messages to Madras, to the British. That also, I mean, especially under Tipu, she is just secluded to the Zanana, and the only outing she could have in the day was to go to her favorite Kille Venkatramana temple in the palace. And in the puja thali, she would hide those letters and go and take it there. And the pujari and she had a pact, and so with a sleight of hand and a wink or whatever, they would exchange this letter, and that letter would then make its way to Madras through these pradhans.
So he had Islamic practices forced upon the royal family of Zanana?
Not at all. So Hyder that way, not only the royal family, but even on the populace of Mysore. So Dasara was allowed to be celebrated. You have eyewitness accounts of how it was. And there are so many occasions. So as I said, he was very sure, clear in his mind that if he upset that part of it, removed the Vadiyar or removed the Hindu-ness of the kingdom, his kingdom would collapse. And so for him, the end mattered, the power mattered, what faith who followed, and that was their personal issue. He himself was not a very devout Muslim.
Which is what he pulled up his son for doing this. So Hyder from his, I'm reading out, Hyder from his earliest youth of Tipu made no secret of lamenting that his intellect, that is Tipu's intellect, was of inferior order and his disposition wantonly cruel, deceitful, vicious and intractable. Because Tipu was taking delight in hunting sacred bulls of Hindu temples, wounding them and sometimes destroying them with his lance. He abused his son in grossest terms, put him in solitary confinement, and forbade the courtiers to speak with him when he was released. So, Tipu has no such notions. He goes about even before he can ascend the throne. Throne bole to matlab before his father died. Before he could do that, he had already started showing this viciousness, which Hyder didn't show towards the population.
Correct. And in fact, so since he was uneducated, he wanted his sons to get the best of education, Tipu and his younger brother Karim. So, but he didn't know how to educate them. So some Maulvi, someone was called to teach them. And the poor man, he didn't even know what they were learning. So 2-3 years later, he just did a surprise mock examination to see what they have learned. And he was aghast, and his temper, he loses it after he hears. And he admonishes that Maulvi and says, if this is what, the seeds of bigotry are sown in my son's head, he will grow up to become a good mullah but not a good ruler. And he's going to squander away all that I have built. Duba dega my sultanate. And all the hard work that I have done, it can go in a jiffy, because this guy has, of course, no tact and wisdom, but also coupled with bigotry, then it's going to be tough. So he dismisses that Maulvi and puts some other, trainers. But I think quite early in life that seed was well, planted in Tipu's mind. But Hyder, as I said, outside, Bidnur was the place which he first conquers, again by deceit and all of that. There also the coins on the one hand had, images of Shiva and Parvati and all that, because it was like though it was called Hydari pagodas, it still had, he wanted to,
Iconoclastic. Hindu.
Hindu
thing.
iconography had to be respected. And there's that other interesting anecdote where, in front, the Ranganatha Swami temple takes this Rathotsava and takes the Utsav Murti for a procession. And while the procession is going, it crosses a Islamic seminary, and the Pirzada, who's there, a very famous guy, he and his students, like it happens now, come and start throwing stones at the at the procession. The first day the Hindus are outwitted. The next day they group themselves again, regroup, come with clubs and arrows and this, that, and fight their way through, and the procession manages to go past. And the Pirzada is incensed. He rushes to Haidar and complains, and Haidar listens to the whole thing and said, "Who cast the first stone?" And he said, "We." So he said, "Then how can you not expect the other side to retaliate?" He said, "But how can they do this? I mean, how can idolatry be practiced in a Muslim kingdom?" He said, "Who told you this is an Islamic kingdom? I am but a slave of the Maharaja." So the Hindu ruler. So he says, "Then I'm not going to stay in this kingdom." He said, "Be my guest, you go where you want." And he goes away to Madras. He doesn't like it. He wants to come back, and he's never allowed to come back into the kingdom. So this guy knew, he was so tactful. And as I said, not a devout Muslim. He did everything that Islam maybe forbade. He drank so much, lewd and bawdy jokes that he cracked with his male buddies all the time.
Click here to watch the full episode.